I put March Madness in College Football 25 to see which of your favorite teams could survive the biggest tournament in all of American sports. To pick the field, I ranked teams 1 through 68, then put them in their corresponding seed 1 through 16. For the rankings, I took the final CFP poll prior to the start of the playoff at the top 25, then any teams that didn't get votes in either the AP poll or the coaches poll that were not in the CFP top 25 took the next spots in the ranking picked by number of votes. That got us to 39. Then any teams that had 7 or more wins were ranked by wins starting with Navy, who had 10 in the regular season. That got us to 64 teams. So for the final 4 teams, we took 6-win Power 4 teams that also won their bowl game, which turned out to be exactly 4. So that gave us our entire 68-team field. Instead of me telling you all the rules, let's just go through the entire field Selection Sunday style, starting with the first 4 and the results of those games. Let's start with our 6-win Power 4 teams. On one side, we have USC taking on Vandy for the right to play Texas in the first round. And on the other side, we have Arkansas taking on Nebraska, who's fighting to play 1 seed Penn State on the other side of the bracket. While those teams were fighting for 16 seeds, our other first 4 games are looking to be either a 12 or 11 seed in the first round. The 12 seed is a battle between Pitt and Rutgers, while the 11 seed is a fight between Bowling Green and San Jose State. So let's just clean up the first 4 before we get started with our 64-team bracket. USC beats Vandy 17-14 and will take on Texas in the first round, like we mentioned. San Jose State beats Bowling Green 24-7 and will take on the 6th seed UNLV in the first round. Pitt takes down Rutgers 24-7. They'll take on Iowa State, who's a 5 seed. And Arkansas knocks off Nebraska 17-7 and will take on Penn State in the first round. Now that we have that sorted, let's go through our full 64-team field, starting with the number 1 overall seed, Oregon Ducks, in the Eugene Regional. In the first round, the Ducks will take on the 16 seed Arkansas State out of the Sun Belt. The 8th seed in the Eugene Regional will be Ohio, who will take on LSU. Next, we have BYU, the 5 seed, taking on Miami of Ohio, who's the 12 seed. This is our first Power 5 on Power 5 matchup. The 4, Clemson, taking on number 13 seed Michigan. Next, we have 3, Boise State, taking on 14 seed Western Kentucky. We have a full Mountain West Conference matchup with 6 seed UNLV taking on 11 seed and first 4 winner San Jose State. Next, we have 7 seed Memphis taking on 10 seed Georgia Tech. And finally, 2 seed Indiana out of the Big Ten taking on 15 seed Liberty. Each game will be played at the higher seed's home field until we get to the Final 4, ideally running through Eugene, as Oregon is the number 1 seed in the bracket. Moving across the bracket, we'll go with our number 2 overall seed Georgia in the Athens Regional. Georgia in the first round will take on 16 seed Boston College. Next, we have 8 seed Kansas State taking on Louisiana. We have our next first 4 participant Pitt, who will take on Iowa State, the 5 seed. Next, we have our one and only Pac-12 team in the bracket, 13 seed Washington State, who will take on South Carolina out of the SEC. Next, we have a playoff participant, SMU, who will take on 14 seed Texas State. The 6-11 is Colorado taking on UConn, an independent. The 7 seed Texas A&M will take on 10 seed Iowa in a Big Ten SEC matchup. And finally, we have playoff participant Tennessee as the 2 seed taking on 15 seed East Carolina. Moving our way down the bracket, we will now look at the number 3 overall seed Texas and the Austin Regional. So in the first round, Texas will take on another first 4 winner USC in the first round and another Big Ten SEC matchup. 8 seed Marshall will take on Florida in the first round. We then have Missouri as the 5 seed taking on Buffalo. 4 seed Ole Miss will take on Texas Tech, who's the 13. Alabama, a near miss for the playoff this year, as a 3 seed will take on Toledo out of the MAC, who's the 14. Army, one of our highest ranked G5 participants, as a 6 seed will take on TCU out of the Big 12. We have Louisville and Jacksonville State in the 7-10. And finally, the national champion Ohio State is a 2 seed, and they'll play Georgia State, who's the 15. And finally, we're moving to the Happy Valley Regional with our 4th and final 1 seed, Penn State. Penn State is going to take on Arkansas, the final first 4 participant, in another Big Ten SEC matchup, of which we have 3 in the first round. Tulane is going to be the 8 seed who will take on Baylor. 5 seed Illinois will take on James Madison in the first round. Miami, another near-miss playoff participant, is going to take on Big Ten team Minnesota, who's the 13. Arizona State is a 3 seed taking on Northern Illinois, who already has a big non-conference upset this season. Syracuse will take on Sam Houston in the 6-11. Duke and Navy will be in the 7-10. And finally, Notre Dame, the national runner-up, will take on Colorado State out of the Mountain West in our final first round matchup. Before we go any further, leave your comments with a timestamp on them about who's going to win the tournament overall, or any upsets that you see coming up, or any teams that could make a run that are unexpected based on their seeding in the first round. Okay, so let's just sit in these first round games and we'll highlight the important ones as we go along. As you can see on the screen, here are all the winners in the Eugene Regional in the first round. A couple games to point out. Ohio, although they are the higher seed as the 8-9 game, they somewhat have a upset in overtime over LSU 41-35. A near miss, Boise State, a playoff team, beats Western Kentucky 14-7 in the 3-4 matchup. We also have an upset right below that. San Jose State puts a handle on UNLV as the 11 seed, winning their second game of the tournament after making it out of the first 4 21-3. Another near miss for a playoff team, Indiana wins 14-6 over Liberty in the 2-15 matchup. Okay, moving on to the Athens Regional, and there are a couple games at the top of this bracket that we need to talk about. First, Kansas State in the 8-9 takes down Louisiana 26-20 in double overtime. Next, right below that, we have Iowa State, who has a near miss with the other first 4 participant, Pitt, 27-24 in overtime to move on to the second round. We have another upset. The 13 seed Washington State scores 7 points and beats South Carolina, who can't score anything in their first round home game, and they lose to the 13 seed. There's a near miss from another playoff team, SMU, 21-14 against Texas State. All 3 of those teams were questioned why they were in the playoff. Maybe we see it in this first round. We might also mention that Texas A&M put the smack on Iowa in our first Big Ten SEC matchup, 31-3, to move on to the second round. Next, the Austin Regional, starting with Texas, who has a near miss against 16 seed and first 4 participant USC, 24-17. They survive and move on to the next round. Other than that, this bracket was pretty boring. We had all chalk wins, besides TCU with the upset over Army, 28-12. 2 of our highest ranked G5 teams, Army and UNLV, fall in the first round in 6-11 matchups. Finally, we move on to Happy Valley, where we stay in Happy Valley with Penn State, our last 1 seed and our last Big Ten SEC matchup, survives and advances against Arkansas 14-7 in a near miss. Next, we have Baylor and Tulane in a close game, 24-21. Baylor is the 9 seed and moves on. Next, we have a big upset, Minnesota 14, Miami 10, with the 13 seed moving on in that matchup. Finally, we have our next highest G5 rated team with Navy being Duke 30-28 in double OT. They'll take on Notre Dame in the second round. Comment below with any surprises that you saw in the first round, and make sure that you like the video and subscribe to my channel as well. Let's go through a few stats that we saw in the round of 64 just to wrap up all that action that we just had. First, 5 playoff teams won by 1 possession, including both Texas and Penn State as 1 seeds, winning by 7 points, surviving and advancing. 2 13 seeds won in the first round, with Washington State and Minnesota knocking off 2 teams that were considered for the playoffs in South Carolina and Miami. For the conferences, we saw the Big Ten go 6-3. We saw the SEC with the most wins going 8-3. The Big 12 had the best record with a 7-1 first round record, and the last power conference went 4-5 in the ACC. We saw the G5 get 4 wins against the power teams, and a total of 7 non-power teams made it into the round of 32 when you include Notre Dame. Now that we got through that chaos, let's see if we have any of those teams that got an upset in the first round can continue their run, or if there are any teams in the second round that will get an upset against any of these bigger teams that they're taking on. As you can see, the only regional with 4 playoff teams had all 4 playoff teams advance when we're talking about the Eugene Regional. Although it did take Indiana overtime to knock off 7 seed Memphis 21-14. However, it's all about surviving and advancing. They will take on Boise State in the Sweet 16, and Oregon will take on Clemson in the Sweet 16. Over in Athens, we see 2 of the 3 playoff teams in the bracket go down at the bottom of the bracket. First, we have Colorado upsetting SMU 21-9 to advance to the Sweet 16, and they will take on Texas A&M, who upset Tennessee 13-10. Well, we have a 6-7 matchup in the Sweet 16. Up top, we have a 1-5 matchup with Georgia taking on Iowa State. In Austin, although we had first round scares, we have chalk going into the Sweet 16 with Texas, Ole Miss in the 1-4 up top, and Ohio State taking on Alabama in the 2-3 at the bottom of the bracket. Finally, we moved to Happy Valley, where it was not easy for any team to get into the Sweet 16. All 4 games in the second round were decided by 1 possession or less. First, we have Penn State with 21 taking down Baylor at 14. They'll move into the Sweet 16. They'll take on Illinois, who beat Minnesota 15-8. Minnesota, the 13 seed, upset in the first round, can't survive the second round. We'll have a 1-5 in the Sweet 16. Arizona State, the Big 12 participant, takes down Syracuse 21-17. They'll take on Notre Dame, who had a near miss against rival Navy 17-14. We'll have 1-5 and 2-3 in the Sweet 16. A lot of games there, so let's go through a few stats before we move into the Sweet 16. First, we saw 2 playoff teams going down, with both Tennessee and SMU losing before they would have their matchup in the Sweet 16 against each other. Next, the SEC and the Big Ten only lost to themselves in the second round, nobody outside the conference. The Big 12, who went 7-1 in the first round and had the best record, go 3-4 in the second round and only move 3 teams into the Sweet 16. Next, 6 non-playoff teams make it into the Sweet 16. There was room for 4. We got 6 with those 2 upsets. We have all of our 1 seeds. We have all but 1 of our 2 seeds. Let's see who can survive the Sweet 16 and make it into the Elite 8, the regional finals. In the Eugene Regional, you can see Oregon easily gets past Clemson. They will take on Indiana, who wins 10-7 against Boise State. It may seem like a close game, but nobody scored for the last quarter and a half of that game, so who cares what happened in the fourth quarter? Oregon, Indiana in an all Big Ten regional final in Eugene. Next, moving over to Athens, we had 2 close games in the Sweet 16. Georgia takes down Iowa State 21-14. Iowa State had a chance late with a drive to tie up the game. They couldn't pull it off. 3 straight incompletions, finish that game off. Georgia will move on to the Elite 8. They will take on fellow SEC team Texas A&M, who beat Colorado 31-21. It was a close game throughout. Texas A&M got the ball towards the end of the game, drove it down, kicked a field goal to go up 10 with 45 seconds to go, clinching the game, knocking Colorado out of the tournament. So we've got all SEC in Athens. We've got all Big Ten in Eugene. Let's see what happens in Austin. This is where we have our biggest upset of the tournament yet, with Ole Miss taking down Texas 19-16 in overtime, with the biggest playoff upset knocking a 1 seed out before the Elite 8. They will take on fellow SEC team. Maybe another big upset. Alabama takes down Ohio State easily 21-7. The national champs are out of the tournament. We have 2 all SEC Elite 8 matchups with Georgia and Texas A&M in Athens, Ole Miss and Alabama in the Austin Regional, who will be played in Tuscaloosa. We get to Penn State, and this will be the first time that we won't have an all-conference matchup in the Elite 8. Penn State does survive their all-conference matchup against Illinois, 20-14. Illinois had a chance late, down 6, but through 4 straight incompletions. 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, 4th and 10, throwing away their chances to get a big upset against the 1 seed in their bracket. Penn State will move on to take on Notre Dame, who takes down Arizona State 29-17. It's an all-Midwest Elite 8 matchup, but not an all-Big Ten Elite 8 matchup. So we've got the 8 set. In our first Elite 8, we have Oregon taking on Indiana in Eugene. Indiana took the lead, as you can see on the screen, takes the lead 14-10 with 1:13 to go on a 17-yard passing TD. It looks like the Ducks are out. Then on 3rd and 9 with 27 seconds to go, Dylan Gabriel hits Jordan James for 57 yards to get the Ducks down to the Indiana 3 with a chance to win the game. On the very next play, they hook up for the final 3 yards to take the lead with 20 seconds to go and move on to the final 4. Well, they will see the winner of Notre Dame and Penn State. Speaking of which, we have Notre Dame and Penn State in our next Elite 8 matchup. Notre Dame gets the ball and scores a go-ahead TD with 2 minutes to go on a 6-yard pass to Chris Mitchell. Penn State then gets the ball back with a chance to win the game, but Drew Aller throws a pick on 4th and 1 in their own red zone to seal the game. Notre Dame gets a garbage time field goal to push the lead to 17-9, and they have set our first Final Four matchup between Notre Dame and Oregon taking on each other in Vegas at the Allegiant Stadium. Next, in our first All-SEC Elite 8 matchup, we see Georgia and Texas A&M facing off in Athens. Texas A&M was up 21-7 in the second quarter, but Georgia fought its way back and took the lead with a 61-yard pick six to start the fourth. They're up 28-24. Texas A&M then takes 4 minutes off the clock, works their way down the field, and retakes the lead 31-28 with a minute 36 to go on a 10-yard TD run by Le'Veon Moss. But they gave Georgia and Carson Beck too much time, and it took less than a minute for Georgia to strike on this 42-yard TD to Arian Smith. A&M then got the ball back with a chance. They got down to the Georgia 32, but they couldn't cash it in, and Georgia is the third team to advance to the Final Four, and they await the winner of the other All-SEC Elite 8 matchup between Ole Miss and Alabama in Tuscaloosa. In our final Elite 8 game, Alabama really just blows out Ole Miss 28-14. There's not much to say about this game. Ole Miss tried to make it interesting. It was 21-7 at the start of the fourth quarter. Alabama scores again to make it 28-7. Ole Miss scores at the end of the game, but it's too little, too late. We have Alabama, Georgia, one of the great rivalries of the late 2010s. We saw it in the SEC championship game. We saw it in the college football playoff. We're going to see it again in the Final Four in New Orleans come next week. All right, so the Final Four. Let's keep it going here. Our first Final Four matchup, we have Notre Dame and Oregon. You know who I'm rooting for. Let's see what happens. Notre Dame actually seems to have the game wrapped up with a 17-10 lead with about 3 minutes to go, and the Ducks having to punt the ball from about their own 50. But of course, it's college football 25. There has to be at least one roughing the kicker penalty per game. So the Ducks get a second chance, and they take advantage. They score a 4-yard TD to Terrence Ferguson with 2:08 left on the clock to tie the game at 17. But again, there's too much time left on the clock. The Irish march the ball down the field, take all the time off the clock, and kick a game-winning field goal as time expires. They win 20-17 and punch their ticket to Dallas for the first ever college football March Madness national championship game, where they await the winner of Georgia and Alabama in the other Final Four matchup. Here we have it, Georgia and Alabama. We see Georgia take the lead 17-14 on this 86-yard TD to Arian Smith. The hero of the Elite 8 strikes again in the third quarter, gives the Bulldogs the lead. Georgia hits a field goal with less than 2 minutes to go to push the lead to 6, and Alabama has no answer in the end. So what we get was a second round game in this year's college football playoff with Notre Dame taking on Georgia in the CFB March Madness National Championship game in Dallas. Let's see who pulls off the first ever March Madness win for college football. Before we see the national championship, again, make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel, and let's see who can pull off this amazing win. Georgia, Notre Dame in AT&T Stadium. Each team starts the game with a turnover on their first drive. Tragedy in the national championship game. Trevor Etienne fumbles on first down in the red zone as Georgia looked to take the early lead on the first drive of the game. Then on the very next possession, Riley Leonard throws a pick on third down in Georgia territory. But after the rough start, things kind of picked up. Notre Dame actually kicks off the scoring with a 13-yard pass to Chris Mitchell from Riley Leonard with 21 seconds left before halftime to go up 7-0. Georgia then ties it up with a minute to go in the third quarter after a 20-yard pass from Beck to Trevor Etienne, scores a touchdown. It's 7-7. Notre Dame gets the ball back and can't get anything going, so they punt to Georgia with 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Georgia then does what Notre Dame did in the game before. They worked their way down the field. They finished the game with a 40-yard field goal as time expires to win the national championship 10-7 over Notre Dame, and they are our March Madness champions. So while it seems like fiction, if they keep expanding the playoff, maybe we'll have a 64-team field by 2040. But for now, it's fun to see what would happen if we had a 64-team or a 68-team playoff in college football. Let me know what you think below. Should Georgia have won it? Is there any upsets that you thought was just the game screwing it over? And who would you have wanted to win it? And let me know if you like my new studio. I just worked all week on having it. That's why there was no video last week. So make sure you let me know what you think and any improvements that I could do. But really, thanks for watching that video. If you've made it this far, make sure that you leave a comment. I've been asking all video for you to leave a comment. Like and subscribe. I put a lot of work in this video, so let me know that you liked it. If you wanted to watch more of my videos, I do have those. On this side, I've got my Perfect Power 5 Conference Realignment. Go ahead and check that out. Check it out there. Up here, I've got my most popular video about SEC and conference realignment, how that's affected the playoff. Other than that, I've got my subscribe link over here, and we'll catch you next time. See ya!